We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Sunday. We're in the weekend and things slow down a little bit. So, I thought I'd pick things up, make my job a little easier today. And we're going to do it again. We're going to do a TikTok live and simultaneously, we are going to do the podcast. So basically, what you're going to have is a TikTok live as a podcast. I always like doing this too because I get a lot of questions and comments and that sort of thing, and it keeps things rolling along pretty well. When it's just me doing the podcast, I think sometimes it kind of lags. It's nice when I have some interaction from a guest or from TikTok. And we've got some stuff to talk about. It's not as hectic as typically we see during the week when all the things are happening. But we're getting some people joining now, which is good to see. For those people coming to TikTok Live, you just need to know up front, in addition to this being a TikTok Live, I'm recording it for the Rational Boomer podcast. So if you don't hear the whole live or want to hear the whole live, you can always go to Spotify or YouTube and get the TikTok Live. So here we go. The other thing a couple things I'm going to tell you. We'll get some Trumplefucks in here. We have some moderators to deal with them, but we have, if you get the Trumplefucks in here, don't interact with them. Don't bother talking to them. They're just looking for a platform that they don't have themselves, and they're going to try to start stuff. And then when they start stuff, they try to take the video down. We don't want to do that. So just ignore them. They're inconsequential. And anyway, and after November 5th, they'll be a little more than a fucking joke. So that's good news. Um, the what else was I going to tell you? Um, if if you haven't listened to the Rational Boomer podcast as yet, you can go to Spotify for the audio version, or go to YouTube for the video version. Just go to those sites and put in Rational Boomer, and you'll find it. Ray Captain is here today too. He's a great moderator. And I just caught Ray Captain by surprise. I kind of pulled this out of my ass here at the last minute. Thank you for your truth, Mr. Boomer. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I can talk all the shit I want, but if you aren't out there listening and interacting, it's really of no consequence. So you people are just as important as anybody else. And that's why on the podcast, when I do have guests on, they're listeners. They're not somebody selling a podcast or another co-host or that sort of thing. It's always somebody who's a listener, who's of the same mindset, and maybe has some different perspectives on things. Um, Hold on a sec. Oh, I know what else I was going to tell you. Um, People will come and ask me to be on the live with me, and I want to do those sorts of things, but I won't do it in this situation, and I'll tell you why. It's not that I'm ignoring you; it's because I'm recording it for the podcast. If I put you on the live with me, first of all, I'd have to know who you are because I got some crazy fucks the first time I did it. But if I do that, the people on the podcast would not be able to hear you. So that kind of screws up the whole process. Somebody says, tell us your story. How did you come to this? Come to doing TikTok and come to doing the podcast? Well, I worked in radio for most of my life. I worked in the music business a little bit. I did some regular business jobs, but it always been in a situation where I talk a lot. And then when I retired, I wanted to do something in terms of a podcast, and I believe that I can't just start a podcast because nobody knows who you are or what you do. And um, so I said, well, I'll try TikTok at first. Everybody said, you got to have a niche. I don't know what the fuck a niche is. But my niche ended up being looking like this, looking like a Trump humper, but talking like the way I talk. The reason I got so passionate about politics, I've always had an interest in it. But as of late, I saw what the dangers were with Donald Trump. And as an older guy, I'm not worried about my future. Mine's pretty well set in stone, but I have kids, I have grandkids, and what's going on could screw up their lives. And in my waning years here, at the very least, I got to do everything I can to try to make their lives better. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Latinos for Harris. Alan Lichtman predicted Harris's victory. Yes, I heard that. And I think Lichtman is probably one of the more credible people that we that we hear from. So I was excited to hear that. He's been right every time except 2000 where he picked Gore. But again, you know what happened there with the Supreme Court? He probably was right and the Supreme Court fucked up. I listen to you all the time. Thank you for that. That is, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Mike, haven't seen you in a while. Well, I'm here every day on TikTok. I do 4, 5, 6, 7 TikToks every day. I do a podcast every day. I'm on YouTube with the TikToks. I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. So apparently the TikTok algorithm is messing with us here. The only individual that gives you the real deal, you're awesome, brother. Thank you very much, Tech. I'm not the only one that gives you the real deal. I'm unique to myself in the way I deliver it, but there are other people out there doing a good job too. Um, 4 happy kings, 1 shepherd. You are my twin. I'm sorry for you. I hope you're not talking about identical twin, because if that's the case, I'm sorry. Mr. Mike, the bald mechanic, says from Canada, sure hope Trump doesn't get in. You're doing a great job. Donald Trump will not get in. I guarantee you he will not get elected president. My only hope is that it is a decisive win, maybe even a landslide, and I think that's distinctly possible. Donald Trump is the worst candidate for president in the history of this country. Kamala Harris is the most popular presidential candidate in the history of this country. Just those 2 factors, and there's many more, are enough to suggest that it's going to be a serious win for Kamala Harris. Let's see here. Listening from Missouri, Puddin, 1950. Hi, Puddin. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Listening from Louisiana. Appreciate you. I love Louisiana too. I love Missouri too. But Louisiana, I've been to New Orleans a number of times, and that's always a fun stop. Hello from Michigan. What else we got here? Love the way you keep it real. Try to keep it real the best I can. Listening from Pennsylvania. Hopefully you folks in Pennsylvania will kick it into gear and get that win for Kamala in Pennsylvania. That's an important win. You folks in Pennsylvania are very important. Somebody says you should run for office. That would be a horrible idea. I'm not the kind of personality to run for politics because first, I don't listen to shit. Secondly, I'm not very diplomatic. I'm not going to couch anything I say, and that will piss off a bunch of people. Plus, I don't like meetings. I don't like to conform to things. I probably wouldn't be the best for it. I'm better sitting on the outside, stirring the shit and trying to force the other fuckers to do their job. Thani Ray, Rational Boomer CA, thank you very much. California, I'm assuming she's saying. How did Donald Trump vote in Florida when he's a felon not to be sentenced yet? That's against the law. No, it's not against the law. It's a weird, another loophole. In New York, where he was found criminal, there's a rule. If you're a convicted felon but not in jail, then you can still vote. Florida accepts whatever the state they're convicted in. So legally, he can vote. But once he goes to jail, motherfucker can't vote. Did you see earlier in the week that Trump thought Bitcoin was really a coin? No, I did not see that, but I'm not surprised in the least. Not in the least. I mean, let's be honest. Donald Trump, you can call him a lot of things, evil and calculating and a liar and a petty motherfucker, but he is profoundly stupid. I mean, you listen to his answers. He's not very articulate. He speaks at about a 5th grade level. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I've watched several times when he's asked important economic questions and he hasn't a clue. He's just talking in circles. Now, somebody who talks as much as I do, I know about talking in circles, but if you're going to do that, you got to at least try to sound like you know what you're talking about. And he doesn't. He doesn't read anything. He doesn't understand anything unless it has to do with him. And all of that is just a means to an end to get him elected. So he doesn't take any time to learn anything. Harry says, do you think the Democrats will win the Senate? I do. I do. And a lot of people will disagree with me because it is a tight situation. But I think we're looking at a very unusual election. So much, so badly has gone for the Republicans. I think we're going to see a lot of surprises like Ted Cruz, Rick Scott. Those guys could go down very easily. Trump is delusional. Yeah, there's no question about that. You're doing a great job from Saul Zalea Viegas, written The Power of Dreaming. Thank you, Saul. Trying to get a plug in there, aren't you, Saul? That's fine. I haven't read the book, so I don't know what it's about. Hawaiian gentlemen, Democrats need Senate, House, presidency to get anything done. You're absolutely right. We need to have full control so we can eradicate these Republican motherfuckers. Did you see his Donald Trump spraying in Wisconsin talking about schools doing crazy surgeries? Yeah. Donald Trump said that. He talked, and again, he just pulls shit out of his ass. He just says whatever. And narcissists like this are always exaggerating. So he went off and said that, can you imagine sending your kid to school, them giving him an operation to change his sex, and then years later wondering what the hell happened to him? That is so obviously stupid and so obviously ridiculous. But he thinks he's smart. And the Republicans who follow him know better, but they're either afraid of him or they're just doubling down because they have no choice. Kamala is going to mop him up Tuesday, a prosecutor versus a felon. I think that's absolutely true. Some people have said to me, well, what if he keeps talking and rolls over the top of her? It's not going to happen. First of all, they have the muted mics when the other person is talking. Secondly, all Kamala really has to do is not really listen to what he says. Well, I shouldn't say not listen. She shouldn't respond to his comments as if she's trying to protect herself from what he said, because once he gets the upper hand in that way, she starts to lose. She needs to attack him at every time, bringing up of his many crimes or his failures and keep doing that. What this will do is will embarrass him. And that's the absolute worst thing you can do to a narcissist. And then they freak out. Then they start screaming and yelling and they lose their shit. And that's what we want to happen to Donald Trump. MS says, watch you every day. Thank you. I appreciate that. Andrea says, did you see the video on his child care? Yeah. Once again, he was asked about child care and he goes off on tariffs and everything. He doesn't understand anything about child care. See, this is where it's going to be a separation in that debate. They're going to ask serious questions. He's going to go off with all this gibberish shit, and then Kamala's going to give a sound and cogent answer. He's going to look stupid in that regard. Trump appeals to the with the same comprehension, people with the same comprehension skills. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, one of the most disconcerting things I found when Donald Trump first got elected, I was surprised and disappointed by the fact that there are as many stupid people as there are in this country, or gullible anyway, and they continue to follow him. And it just surprises me that they continue to do it. It's gotten to the point where it's too late, and even when they step aside, the stink of Donald Trump is going to stick with him. When he loses in November, this clown is going to get buried in legal aspects, and he is going to be a pariah in this country. He's going to be the butt of a lot of jokes, not unlike Richard Nixon. Candy Claxton says, can you discuss Project 2025? Well, I haven't read the whole thing. I know bits and pieces of it. We know it's bad. We know they want to mess with Medicare and Social Security, and they want to make women second-class citizens and such. The whole thing is bad. It's ridiculous. And it's amazing to me that prior to the election, they wrote this thing down and published it. I mean, they had to know this was going to kick back on them, or did they think they could just run it under the radar? And so their MAGA base sucked it up and said, yeah, that's what we want. Well, the Democrats did the right thing. They read that motherfucker 2025, Project 2025. They exposed this shit and they attached it to the Republicans, including Donald Trump. And now all of a sudden they're running away from it. But they can't. They can't run away from it. It's not going to work. And it's one of the things that's going to kill them in November. And that's why I say I'm feeling more confident about the Senate. The House is, they're going to win big in the House, the Democrats. Senate's going to be tougher, but I think people are just so sick and tired of everything that is Republican and all the horrific things they've done that there's going to be a big vote or a big push against all Republicans. Vicky Tolbert said he's not a smart man. How do smart people justify voting for him? Well, there's only a few options. They are just as dumb as he is, or dumber. They are culpable with the grift and the crimes that he's committing, or they're in a cult and they're brainwashed. That's the only three options there really is. Okay, I'm seeing a few Trumplafucks show up. Great captain, and sometimes they're very covert about it. They'll say something and they'll tip their hand. Great captain and TJ, check out Sue. You know what? Hell with that. I'll take care of it myself. I have that ability. I can block people on here. And you know what? There was one guy who was on a live with me, and I don't know what he said. He appeared to be a little crazy, claims to be a Democrat, claims to have had a big account on TikTok, and one of my moderators blocked him. And he wrote me in DM and he was furious. He was threatening me and all that kind of shit. These motherfuckers don't scare me. What are you going to do? DJT thinks tariffs will pay for everything like childcare. That's the one thing you've got to understand. He doesn't understand the basics of economics. Tariffs don't work. And it's simply because he goes to China and says, I'm going to put a 10% tariff on your cars or stereos or whatever. So what does China do? They add 10% to the cost of the product and we pay for it. It's pretty simple. Any idiot, some dumb white guy in his living room understands this shit, but apparently Donald Trump doesn't, or he doesn't have another answer to the thing, and he just says anything. This guy honestly thinks he's brilliant, that he's a superstar, that whatever he comes out of his mouth, people will just acknowledge and believe, and it's just not the case. Do you know what's happening with the assassination attempt? I do not. I understood there is a congressional investigation going into it, and it's surprising, isn't it? A former president of the United States, they attempt to assassinate him. Nobody wants to talk about it. None of the information from the doctor's appointment was released. Nothing. We know nothing about it. And to me, that seems suspicious. If Donald Trump isn't screaming from the mountaintop about this assassination attempt, he was trying to use it to his benefit in this election. So why isn't he talking about it? Is it maybe there's some things that he doesn't want people to find out? I tend to think that's the case. And I know that sounds like a conspiracy theory, and I don't know exactly what happened, but the fact of the matter is some things that we don't know about happened, and the question is, why don't we know about them? We should. Um, in the Senate, I think Hawley, Scott, Cruz, Blackburn might all get beat. I'm with you there. They're all susceptible, especially in these times with the abortion issue. See, that's the thing. A lot of people think overturning Roe v. Wade is only going to affect Donald Trump, and that's not the case. Republicans have to take the heat. All of them have to take the heat for overturning Roe v. Wade. And if you're for vote Roe v. Wade, whether you be Democrat or Republican, and you don't vote for Donald Trump, why then would you vote for Rick Scott or Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz or Marsha Blackburn? Doesn't make sense. And that's why I think the Senate is more in play than a lot of people would have you believe. See, a lot of people make their predictions based on history, what's happened in the past. And here's the problem with that. We're at a time in history, these things have never happened before. It's very unusual, unprecedented, if you will. And if we're in unprecedented times, how do you match it up or compare it to past history? We're talking apples and oranges. A lot of things are happening that we don't expect, that weren't common in history. So it's reasonable to think that maybe the reactions to these things might be a little different too. GOP down ballot money is drying up. You're absolutely right about that. And that's interesting. Kamala Harris has raised almost $600 million. She said she's sending $25 million to the down ballot elections, which never happened before. Nobody, no presidential candidate has ever sent that much. So the question is, how much is Donald Trump sending to the down ballot? Well, he's sending zero. In fact, he's grifting them because he's siphoning money off the RNC who would be funding the down ballot folks. So you're absolutely right. Down ballot is fucked. It's absolutely fucked. Um, let's see here. Just blocking somebody else who needs to be blocked. It's being investigated by a congressional committee. You're talking about the assassination. Yes. And it'll be interesting to hear what we hear from that. You have to understand almost everything that's going on in government right now is on hold. Nothing is really going to happen as long as the Republicans hold the House, the slim majority. We just got to sit on our hands, go out and vote, and wait till after November 5th. Once that happens, things are going to change. And then on January 3rd, we get the new Congress. And if we get a new Congress with the House and Senate being held by the Democrats, we're going to see some interesting stuff happen. A lot of good stuff. Um, let's see here. Unfortunately, gerrymandering is still out there. It is. Gerrymandering is out there, yes. So it was there in 2020 too, 2020 also. So, there are people out here that consistently are looking for things to be worried about. Gerrymandering is an issue. It's something that we have to deal with. But to think that's going to throw the election to Donald Trump is a little crazy. There's going to be an unprecedented amount of people voting in this election. The win for Kamala is going to be big, and it's going to be hard for even gerrymandering to affect that. Um, Russia deep in MAGA. Yeah, we're finding that out, aren't we? I get a lot of accusations. Oh, you're getting paid by the DMC. You're getting paid a ton of money by the DMC. No, I'm not. I take their money. If all I have to do is sit here and tell the truth and they'll pay me to do it, I'll do that and I'll be proud of that. The fact of the matter is, the right side podcasters and such are taking money directly from Russia to spew lies. So that's a problem. And now they're indicted. And I'm hearing that there might be some other indictments. There's some sealed indictments going on um, in right side media and right side podcast and such. So expect to see some more subpoenas, or not subpoenas, indictments coming out. And we might be surprised. I heard one person say, I think it was, who was it? Chasing Oz. She believes that Elon Musk is going to get an indictment for all the stuff he's doing on Twitter and these AI memes and all this other bullshit. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. I hope Elon does get nailed because he is a special kind of piece of shit. Um, Here's another one. All right, I'm on a roll today. I've already blocked 5 people. Nice. Hi, Boomer. Hey, how you doing? He's not sending nothing. He needs to pay his bills. That's exactly. He needs to pay his legal bills is what he needs to do. How come no one talks about Jeffrey Epstein? Well, that's a good question. A lot of powerful and wealthy people are tied to Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm sure there's a lot of efforts to keep that shut down. You know, I think that will ultimately come out. Like I said, once we get past November 5th, Donald Trump gets beat. He's kicked to the curb by the Republicans because he continues to lose elections. We're going to see a lot of things coming out. We're going to see more things about Donald Trump, crimes, corruption, and that sort of thing that we don't even know about now. So we'll see what happens. But I think Jeffrey Epstein stuff will come out. But again, it's about after the election when Democrats have some control. G-Man Real Deal says maggots, it's a damn cult, no other conceivable reason. They wholeheartedly believe in a lying grapist. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. The connection to Russia that MAGA has is astonishing. You know, Donald Trump likes to talk about the Mueller report and Russia, 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 and how it was a hoax. Well, just because he says that doesn't mean it's true. I mean, his campaign manager went to jail for his connection to Russia. So to suggest that Donald Trump has a tie in with Russia, that's not crazy to think. He fucking certainly does. And stuff like that, um, um, that's going to come out too and be exposed later. Silencer Man says, thank you, big dog. Stand on business. Well, thank you, Silencer Man. I appreciate that, and I will do. Um, do you think impact of the Chinese will help older Republicans? No, I don't. I mean, older Republicans, we're talking about boomers. I'm a young boomer, but I heard an interesting bit of data. They said since 2016, 20 million boomers have died, and 40 million Gen Zs have come of age to vote. This is the big problem for the Republicans, the young voter. They are coming in droves now, and by 2028, they will have the majority of the voting bloc. Republicans' time is short. It's going to end in 2024, but even if it didn't, by 2028, they'll be out of business. What is the down ballot? Could you explain? Absolutely. Down ballot. Okay, you have the presidential election. And when we talk about the down ballot, we're talking about those elections for members of the House of Representatives, senators, um, governors, state legislators. So that's the down ballot. The main ballot is, of course, the presidency, but it's everything other than that: senators, representatives, legislators, governors, and that sort of thing. This is exactly why they want to raise the voting age. Absolutely. The youth is their bane. They're going to get their. I just got a. I got a flag for harassment. I don't know who the fuck I'm harassing here, but it's typical of the Trumplafucks to come after me and say I'm being mean. Isn't that ironic that Republicans would say I'm being mean? Peter Navarro was trying to get GOP to stop using Kamala's first name. He thinks it personalizes her. Oh, it makes her like a real human being? Jesus Christ. I cannot fucking believe people. The racism is culpable. What about 70 plus officials in swing states that are set not to certify election when Kamala wins? Well, first of all, you're hearing this story and people are hyping it up. Not all of these 70 election um, officials are in a position. They aren't the bosses. So, they're just incidental people into this thing. All of this you're talking about and worried about is something we've gone through um, in 2020. So the Harris Walls campaign is ready for this stuff. They've already hired 10 times as many lawyers to be on this shit. That's not going to be a thing. Young voters definitely not on GOP side. It'll be the young voters and women who push Dumpy out. Vote blue all the way down. Dick Baker says, evening, Mike. Let me get back there. Jesus. This thing takes off on me and I lose it. Oh, half of Congress and Supreme Court are going to be indicted. I hope that's true. I do hope that's true. I'm certain that sitting members of Congress will be indicted because they were part of the January 6th thing. And after the election, those are when the indictments will come out. Clarence Thomas certainly has the opportunity to be indicted and possibly Alito. We can only hope. Um, we can only hope that happens. MTP 5519. Did you hear about Let's Hit and Run? Have not heard about that, so I'm not sure what that's about. Um, um, that's where Harris should put Liz Cheney in her cabinet. Well, she could put Liz Cheney in her cabinet, but here's what you have to understand about Liz Cheney. As much as we like her for her credibility and her integrity, she is an ultra conservative politician. She's against abortion. She was against LGBTQ for a time until her sister came out. She's not a friend of the Democrats. She's not doing what she's doing to help the Democrats. It is helping the Democrats. She's just doing the right thing, the truth. She's sticking to the truth. And I don't know why people get excited about a politician just doing what they're supposed to do and have some integrity. That should be the least we could expect out of them. Grandmother are voting blues to protect daughters and granddaughters. Yeah, I've said that before. This whole campaign, this whole election is really a war against women, people of color, and the LGBTQ. They want to marginalize all these groups, and the fact that Kamala Harris is a woman, I think, is appropriate. A woman of color, that's appropriate. Um, this is a war against women, and the women in this country are the ones that are going to put the Democrats over the top. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, TJ the Plumber says, listen to the Rational Boomer podcast on Spotify and YouTube. If you're not listening to the Rational Boomer podcast, I encourage you to do that. You can go to Spotify, just search Rational Boomer, and there's the audio version of the podcast. It's there every fucking night. YouTube, the same. The video version of the podcast is there. Just look for Rational Boomer and you'll find it. Hell, you can Google Rational Boomer and you'll find me. And by the way, the YouTube link to the podcast is in my profile, so you can do that. I think. Yeah, you should be able to do that. If Republicans don't change their stance on women's rights, I don't see them ever holding office again. Well, that's a good point. When this election is over and they get soundly beat, they're going to have to make some changes or they will die on the vine. And I suspect they'll have to step back, regroup, and figure out a new plan because what they're doing now is not working and it'll continue to not work until they make some changes. And even if they do make some changes, it's going to take some time for them to get legs again. Democratic governors will have electors arrested for violating election law. Yeah, as well as they should. I mean, we've had fake electors already arrested and going to trial, so it's not surprising that they would do that this time around. SO Livestock says House and Senate. I believe that the Democrats can win both. I think there's no question about the House. The Senate might be tougher, but I believe they will win in the Senate too, even if it's just by one seat. It doesn't matter, even if it's 50-50. Because here's the deal: if it's 50-50, then Tim Walz, as the vice president, as the president of the Senate, he will be the tiebreaker, much like Kamala Harris was for a time. Do we need a new DOJ? We need some changes in the DOJ. Merrick Garland, he may be a sharp jurist. He may be an intelligent guy. He may have some integrity, but he's doing a horrible job as the attorney general. Fucking horrible job. He sat on his thumbs about Donald Trump for 2 years before he hooked up Jack Smith. And that's why we're in the position we're now, where we're cutting it down to the line to prosecute this guy, and everybody's shuffling in place because of the election. Had he done it right away after he took office, it would have been a much different situation, and he should have done it. I think when Kamala Harris becomes president, one of the first things she needs to do is fire Merrick Garland and get somebody in there that understands the job and isn't too afraid to be political. Going to need a few cycles to redo SCOTUS, but it's doable. Yeah, it's doable. One of the things that I suggested, and some people have said good idea, some other people said this won't work, and I'm not an expert, but since Clarence Thomas has the potential of getting indicted, and his wife has the potential of getting indicted, and even Alito to a certain extent, It would be interesting if somebody from the DOJ went to Clarence and Alito and said, listen, man, you're going to get indicted. You broke the law. It doesn't matter if you're a Supreme Court justice. You don't have immunity, so you're going to get indicted. Or you could just retire, go away, go into the sunset, and not get indicted. That seems like something Donald Trump would do, so that's why I think it's a good idea in this case. Let's get tough with him. Let's put the pressure on him and get him the fuck out so we can balance out the Supreme Court right away as opposed to waiting, 8 years to get it done. Because we really need to fix the Supreme Court. Without a credible without a credible Supreme Court, it's hard to maintain democracy. And isn't that what we're doing here? We're trying to save democracy. So we got to get on it with the Supreme Court and get that straightened out as quickly as possible. Vote blue the entire ticket and impeach some folks. Yeah, some people say, well, I will vote for Republican here and there. There are Republicans out there that say, well, I'm not MAGA. But you stood by MAGA. You didn't try to stop MAGA. So as far as I'm concerned, you're just as bad as MAGA. That's why I would say don't vote for any Republican. I've had people call me and I've had people meet me. And the first question I ask, when we're talking about these state elections, they don't always talk much about partisanship. They act like it doesn't make a difference. But I always ask them, are you Democrat or Republican? And when they say Republican, I just say, look, we got nothing to talk about. I will not vote for any Republican for dog catcher on up. I'm just not going to do it. I can't trust you fucks. Look what you did. Mary Herrera says, thank you for being so sensible. Thank you. They did lie to Congress during their confirmations. Yeah, they were all asked about Roe v. Wade. They all said it was settled law and they wouldn't mess with it. First thing they do is fucking mess with it. There should be some ramifications for lying in Congress by Supreme Court justices or proposed Supreme Court justices. But that's the thing. We can't trust these fucks. And if we can't trust the Supreme Court, who the fuck can we trust? Let's see here. She can't put Liz Cheney in her cabinet. That would be two crazy people in it. I wouldn't say Liz Cheney's crazy, but she's totally the opposite of what we want as Democrats. So I don't see her putting her in the cabinet. Maybe Kinzinger. That's a possibility. Keep it on, Boomer. We'll do that. GF Ballman says something like 60% of young voters support Kamala. I actually thought I heard 71%, but doesn't matter. Yolanda Pedersen says, enjoy your streaming. Thank you. I enjoy doing the lives too because it moves along very quickly. I get to interact with people, and that to me is more important than me just pontificating. Can't wait for the debate. Deal breaker for me. Debates typically haven't been a deal breaker in most elections. I think this one is important because I think Democrats are looking for retribution against Donald Trump. And I think that Kamala Harris is in a position to do it. She's training and strategizing for this. And Donald Trump is just an absolute fool. He can't come up with a single question. And I think she'll call him out on it. And as I've said before, I think what she needs to do is keep attacking him, embarrass him at every turn, because this is the one thing that drives him nuts. 71 is good. Yeah, I agree. Is anything ever going to happen to Trump? I get tired of all these things coming up on him and nothing. Well, Pinot kids, let me explain something to you. I always hear people say this. Nothing's ever happened to him. He's been convicted of 34 felonies. He's been found liable for sexually assaulting a woman. He's been fined through these lawsuits to the tune of almost $500 million. He's being embarrassed in the media every day. A lot has happened to Donald Trump. What you're really saying is, I'm not going to be happy till he's in jail. And I get that, but just wait. The other trials he's got after the election where he's got no protection, those are certainly guaranteed to put him in jail. Those are serious crimes. He will go to jail. Plenty has happened to him, and more is going to happen to him. I'll tell you what's going to happen, and this is a prediction. I don't give predictions typically. We're going to have the election. Kamala will win. She'll win a decisive victory, maybe even a landslide. Donald Trump will be ignored by the Republican Party because um, he keeps losing for them. He has no protection as being a candidate or being the president, and he's going to get buried with his criminal legal problems. Did you see Trump's last interview rambling? Yeah, I've seen every one of Trump's rambling interviews. He never says anything of any importance or anything even cogent. So, yeah, I saw him, and hopefully a lot of people saw him because even if you're a Trump-fuck, you got to wonder what the fuck is going on here. I mean, Jesus Christ. Um, Mahad A, I love watching you every time you're on. Thank you for the update. Thank you, Mahad. Um, will he go to jail? I think he most certainly will go to jail because he'll be found guilty of, the insurrection or election interference. He's got so many things against him. After the election, when these trials go through, at one point or another, he's going to jail. He has to go to jail. He's already been convicted of 34 felonies. When he's convicted of more felonies, they have no choice but to put him in jail. He's a buffoon, but MAGA crowd is even more so. Yeah, they just kind of parrot what he says, regardless of how stupid it is. We need Kamala to win and take back Senate by 5 or more House seats. Well, the House is, we might get 30 seats in the House. That's distinctly possible. Senate, I don't know what we'll get there. I'd like to see us get 60. I don't think that's possible, but we should win the Senate. Kamala is prepared to stand up under Trump's Gish Gallop style. And Noel, when you say Gish Gallop, that's a fancy word for just talking and not stopping, talking louder and continuing to talk. But he's got a problem with the muting of the mics. He's got to stop talking at some point. So it's harder for him to employ that strategy. And secondly, Kamala is training for this. She's seen him do this. She knows what she needs to do. And Kamala is an entirely different personality than Joe Biden is. Joe Biden's personality, even if he'd been young, would be a mismatch for Donald Trump because Donald Trump likes to roll over the top of people. And Joe Biden isn't the kind of guy that would go on the attack. Kamala Harris will go on the attack, and Kamala Harris will shut him down. See, just because Donald Trump talks a lot and tries to talk over people doesn't mean it always works and there's no strategy against it. I've had Trumplefucks on the podcast and they've tried the same thing. And I explained to them, you think you can talk over me? Well, I can talk for fucking ever. I can talk loudly. The only difference between you and me is I'm telling the truth and you're talking bullshit. And that's what we're going to have with Kamala in the debate. Do you think he will flee to Hungary? No, I don't think he'll flee anywhere. I mean, if he flees, that would be illegal, correct? He's being guarded by the Secret Service, which is a law enforcement arm. Now, if he's going to flee to another country, those Secret Service people better go with him because they'll be in legal trouble for allowing him to do it. The documents case is really bad for Trump. It is. That will be overturned and that will be back on track. Wall says, love watching you. I visit your page at least once a day. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Wall. I appreciate you listening. He did say something of great importance. He admitted he lost by a whisker. Yeah, that's a problem because a lot of these trials have that they want to say, well, he didn't know. He thought he won. Well, he just confessed there that he knew he didn't win. So all this bullshit that he did is clearly illegal. After the election, I believe Cannon will be thrown off the Florida document case. You know, it's interesting. When Jack Smith appealed to the 11th Circuit, he didn't ask for her to be kicked off. And I think he did that on purpose. I think he thought that might make it harder for him to win that. I don't know. But you got to remember this court, this 11th Circuit, has already overturned some of her her decisions and admonished her for it. And then on top of it, at least a couple of the judges have said, you know, you need to recuse yourself. You need to recuse yourself. So they may just choose to do it because they're tired of getting embarrassed. Hello from New Mexico. Viva la Kamala. Thank you. Love New Mexico. Haven't been there for 40 years, but beautiful place. I love Santa Fe. Dr. Stephanie, can Donald Trump vote being that he's a felon? Yeah, he can vote. I was talking about this earlier. In New York, the law is that if you're convicted felon but not in jail, you can vote. Now, that's not the case in Florida, but Florida will accommodate the New York law, especially since he was convicted in New York. So, yeah, he can technically vote. It doesn't matter that dumb fuck. That dumb fuck. It just doesn't matter. He probably doesn't even know what he's doing when he's in that box. Jim says, I don't understand how it's possible Trump can get more than 30% of the vote. Well, we don't know that he can. I mean, we saw what he got in 2020, but what you have to understand is 2020 and Donald Trump is a different parallel universe from 2024 and Donald Trump. Think of all the things that we learned were revealed to us about Donald Trump, the convictions, the sexual assault, all the lying, the documents. A lot has changed since 2020. Donald Trump is not as strong as he was in 2020. And he may probably get 30% of the vote, but that would calculate being the base, the dumb fucks, the cult members. Um, Theoretically, in a normal world, in a normal parallel universe, he wouldn't get any votes. He wouldn't even be the nominee. So there's a lot of weird shit going on here. Mike Test, Trump always powers up from debates, throw logic out the window. He bullies. He does bully. But here's what you have to understand. Just because he has that style doesn't mean he's not beatable. He is. And what's going to happen is people are going to be paying more attention to the content of what he says. And he doesn't have the ability to speak in any valuable content. So he's going to look very stupid in this thing. Do you think Trump has an escape plan? No. He's not a smart man. He doesn't think ahead at all. That's why he constantly says stuff that gets him in trouble. All right. It's hard to win the Senate considering Montana might toss Tester. Well, that's true. But is Rick Scott going to win in Florida, especially if Florida flips? I don't know. Is Ted Cruz going to win in Texas? We don't know. As somebody pointed out earlier, there's a number of them. There's a number of them that are kind of in questionable spots, more so than everything that we've seen in the past. All right, this one, I don't understand this one. She's 5'2". He thinks he's going to tower over her. Yeah, but they're not going to be standing next to each other. It's not going to look the same. Blue Babe here. Thanks for keeping us informed. Thank you. He won't be able to do that. I agree. Judge Tanya Chutkin and is the only one who has the guts to fight Trump. So it would seem. I mean, that's one other problem we have. We have a judicial system that clearly is weak. We didn't know that before Donald Trump, but Donald Trump has played them for all they're worth. They're all afraid to look bad in the election. Well, they better get on top of things when the election is over and Kamala Harris cracks the whip and gets rid of Merrick Garland. Vicky says, very upset that I have people in my life that are very intelligent and educated and they are Trump humpers. That is disconcerting to say the least. I have people in my family that are Trump humpers. I don't know that I can say they're smart and educated, but there are some smart, educated folks. These people are susceptible to being in a cult. These people, and it doesn't matter if you're smart or dumb, everybody's susceptible if you got a weak mind. Do you think the debates really will happen? I think there'll be one debate. I think it will happen. There was a time when I thought Donald Trump would duck out, but it's too close. I mean, we're a few days away, 2 days, 2 or 3 days away. And he almost really has to, because if he goes, he's going to get annihilated. I think he knows this, but he's also a little delusional, so he might think he can win. But if he doesn't go, people are going to call him names and tease him and call him a chicken and all that sort of stuff. And for a narcissist, that's the absolute worst thing you can do to them. So I think he will show up. I do think he will show up. But after he gets annihilated, there won't be another debate. In fact, think they may even shut down the Tim Walz, uh, the Tim Walz JD Vance debate that's supposed to be coming up in October. Did they take his passport? I don't know. I don't think so. His boys will go down with him also. Crazy family. Well, the boys will go down because they live off daddy's money, and daddy's money's going fucking bye-bye. So, and they don't have the wherewithal to create any income. So yeah, they'll go down too. Do you think MAGA will just find another fool to follow when Trump is gone? Now, they might try, but MAGA has a bigger problem. They have failed as a group. They might try to get somebody else. The way you can compare MAGA is to remember the Tea Party. They weren't as bad as MAGA, but they were headed that way, and then MAGA comes out and they're worse. Where's the Tea Party now? Tea Party's gone. They don't exist anymore. They couldn't win elections, so they just disbanded. And that's what's going to happen with MAGA, too. Hillary should be practicing with her. Well, Hillary has given her some tips, as I understand. But I'm not worried about Kamala. I think Kamala might even be a better debater than Hillary, because she's just got this sense of being stronger, and she has one thing that Hillary didn't have with Donald Trump. She's got Kamala's got an immense amount of popularity, and it was just the opposite with Hillary Clinton. She's got a lot going behind her, um, and she's got the momentum. She's on a roll. Elon Musk is not giving millions from what he Elon Musk. I don't know what that means. Melania Trump knows that he's going to lose. That's why she hasn't been around. That's kind of a weird situation too, isn't it? You got a guy running for the presidency. He's married, and his wife is nowhere around. His wife doesn't even like that motherfucker. Yeah, that tells you a little something about what's going on at home. Um, did you know Trump calling to remove the 25th Amendment to remove VP? Yeah, I don't think that's a thing. And everybody talks about the 25th Amendment like they know something about it. Do you understand how the 25th Amendment works? It's really working for the president. It's about the president. And in order to get a 25th Amendment to remove a president, you've got to get the vice president, meaning Kamala Harris, and you've got to get members of the cabinet on board. That's not going to happen. I don't even know why we're talking about that. Um, Jesse says, I'm very concerned about the numbers. She's nowhere near Clinton or Biden's early September numbers. Here's what you have to understand about the polls. We don't know who owns the polls. We're hearing a lot of Republican people with agendas that own the polls. We don't know the questions they're asking. We don't know who they're asking them of. And we don't know what they're doing with the data after they have it and how they're messing with it. Here's some numbers you do need to remember when you talk about support. How about fundraising? What's a better illustration for support than fundraising? Kamala Harris has raised close to $600 million last month. Donald Trump raised $130 million. If the polls were close, why would that be? Kamala Harris has gotten 400,000 volunteers to work for her throughout the country. Donald Trump he's not spending any money to campaign. Don't worry about the polls. The polls told you that there would be a red wave in 2022, and I told you that's not the case because they overturned Roe v. Wade. There was no red wave, even though the polls said there would be. So don't worry about that. Do you think Harris will win the debate? I think if Harris does this right, she'll make Donald Trump so mad he'll walk off the stage because he will be embarrassed and he can't handle it. Do you happen to know what's going on with the assassination investigation? We talked about that earlier. The only thing I know about it is that there is a congressional investigation. We probably won't know anything about it until after the election, like everything else. So, moving on. I'm running into some Trumplafucks out here. I got my moderators picking them off, and I'm picking them off too. Let's see here. The Tea Party is MAGA, in my humble opinion, just worse. Yeah, the Tea Party is just MAGA. That's true. MAGA is just the Tea Party with a massive infection. Um, Elon is scared he's going to jail. He should be scared because the shit he's doing is illegal. Kamala has a higher likability than Hillary. Well, yeah. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Kamala Harris, right now, based on what's going, she may be the most popular presidential candidate ever. Nobody's seen this stuff. Let's see here. Kamala has empathy. She needs to use it in the debate to connect with voters. And she does it very well, to be perfectly honest with you. Ever seen her when she's greeting people, especially little kids? It's a very heartwarming to see. And Donald Trump, he doesn't have any empathy. Um, uh, he doesn't have any empathy at all for anybody. He only thinks about himself. And that's becoming more and more apparent to even the Trumplafucks at this point. Do you think that Harris will win the popular vote and lose the Electoral College just like Hillary? No. No, I think she's going to win the popular vote by bigger than Joe Biden won it, maybe double or triple that amount. And I think she's going to win a decisive win in the electoral vote. No, I don't think it's anything like that. Kamala doesn't have Bill Clinton as a hindrance either. Well, there's that true. Harris wears heels, Trump wears diapers. True enough. You think Trump's going to stalk Harris like he did with Hillary? He can't. The rules say he's got to stand behind the podium. He can't move around, so that's not going to happen. Trump finally admitted he lost. Yes, he did. And I don't even think he realized he admitted it, or he doesn't think he admitted it. If you ask him, he'll say, I never said that. But of course he did, and it's on video, just like everything else Donald Trump has ever done. There's always an audio recording. Melania has a contract with Trump. She'll be gone from Trump soon. I hope her contract is good, and I hope she gets her money early because it's going to be gone soon. Once again, I want to remind you to check out the Rational Boomer podcast. I do a podcast every night. I have guests who are listeners on frequently. I read a lot of emails. If you're a listener, you could be on the show if you want. You can send the emails if you want. If you want to listen to the Rational Boomer podcast, just go to Spotify. The audio version is there. If you want to see the video of the podcast, just go to YouTube, put in Rational Boomer, and you'll be set. Have you seen the latest on the Epstein record on the airplane traveling? I've seen bits and pieces of it. I don't know what's real and what's not real. I think, the whole Epstein thing will come to light, but will definitely not till after the election. Read Trump's Nation by Tim O'Brien from 2008. Have had Trump's number since then. Yeah, I think a lot of people knew how dumb a fuck he is, but he was able to hoodwink and gaslight a bunch of dumb people, which is what he did. My concern is a shutdown, and how can they use that to their advantage? They can't. And when you say they, I think you're talking about the Republicans. There's been a possibility of shutdowns at least 2 or 3 times in the last year. Every time we come to that shutdown, I've said the same thing, and I've been right every time. The last minute of the last day, they will come to terms. Joe Biden has played Kevin McCarthy and Mike Johnson every fucking time. And let's be honest, if they shut the country down that close to the election, it's going to be devastating to the Republicans because they will get the blame for the shutdown. So do I think they will shut it down? No. I think they'll ride it out to the end of the month and then they'll save it and we'll be back on track, or they'll get some kind of delay. I don't think it's going to get shut down because it would be devastating for the Republicans. Uh, if it gets weird, Joe can resign after the election if Kamala wins so she can assume the seat. Um, yeah, I mean, unless there's something goes wrong with Joe Biden, there would be no reason to do it. A better thing, one of my guests on the podcast came up with a brilliant idea. He said that after the election and after January 3rd, when the next Congress is in, there's a 17-day period where Joe Biden's in his last days. Congress is in our favor, and he could pass a bunch of shit, take the heat for it because he isn't running for reelection. And Kamala Harris could say, I didn't do it. That would be interesting. I think that's an interesting concept. I don't know if Joe Biden has it in him to do that, but we'll see. We'll see. You can't believe polls. Remember 2016. Remember 2018. Remember 2020. Remember 2022. You can't trust the polls because we don't know who's funding them and what their agenda is. You don't give money if you're not going to follow the money with a vote. Exactly. Are you going to give an answer in the polls and then go out and vote? Or are you going to go into your pocket, grab your hard earned money, and give it to a candidate and not vote for him? I mean, they've got millions of small dollar donors. Yeah. Even if they were close in fundraising, Kamala Harris has more people donating than Donald Trump does. Susie says, I've gotten 3 texts this past week about polls. I ignore them. I have gotten polls, or not polls, but text from Democrats, from Adam Schiff. I got a poll, not a poll, a text from Donald Trump. Um, and I just responded FDT and blocked them. Her fundraising numbers are out of this world. They are. I mean, these are the biggest ever. Nobody's ever seen this amount of money come in this quickly. And the reason for this is this tells you something about the electorate. They are desperate to get out from under this cloud we're in, this darkness, this chaos we've been stuck with for 8 years. They see a light at the end of the tunnel. They see some hope. They see some joy, and they're starving and they're grabbing at it. And that's one of the reasons I think this is going to be such a big win for Kamala. Vicky says, I hope and feel joy the first time in years with Kamala. Yeah, you and a lot of people. And that's why she's going to destroy Donald Trump. Todd says the Melania thing is very weird. There's more to the story than we know. Certainly, I could care less. Do you think Texas will turn blue? Well, that's a hard one. I don't know enough about Texas to be sure. I've got a guest that comes on the show frequently, Jace. He's in San Antonio, Texas. At first he was saying no way Texas is going to turn blue, but he's even starting to feel that they may turn blue. See, here's the problem with Texas and Florida. The Republicans are in control. You got the abortion bans, which is going to piss off 75% of the electorate in those states. And the states are shitty right now. They have all kinds of problems because of the way the Republicans are handling things. So if they feel enough pressure, if they feel enough of the pain that's being inflicted by the Republicans, they could turn blue. I mean, the Republicans are doing everything they can to cause them to do that. Do you think we can get the House and Senate in November? Yeah, definitely the House. The Senate will be a little harder, but I think that's going to go too. Texas Paul says there's a chance. Colin Allred. I agree with him. There is a chance. Um, I'd like to see Ted Cruz lose his fucking job. Juan says, thank you much, Mike, for keeping us well informed. Well, thank you for listening. Do you think she will install 2 more justices? You're talking about stacking the court. Will she add more justices? She could, but it's really not all up to her. It's up to Congress. Can we get it through the House and the Senate? And then we can add more justices. Unless people retire, and then she certainly can. Scott says, I'm 67. In my 67 years, this is the first time I've given money to a politician. I hear that a lot. There's a lot of first time voters, there's a lot of first time donators, and that tells you a lot. In 2020, there was a record amount of people who voted, 74 million for Donald Trump and 81 million for Joe Biden, or thereabouts. And they didn't vote in those big numbers because Joe Biden and Donald Trump were great candidates. Joe Biden ended up being one of the better presidents we've ever seen, but we didn't know that in 2020. The reason they came out is because they were terrified of Donald Trump becoming president again. And that's what I've always said about this election. This isn't about who's more popular. It's about how bad people hate Donald Trump and how scared they are of Donald Trump. And let's be honest, if you look at 2020 and now 2024, do you think they're any less scared or hate him any less? I would think that's been ramped up a bit. So that's why we're going to have some interesting voting come that day. Why can't Trump answer questions directly? Because he's fucking stupid. He's too lazy to learn anything. He thinks he's smart enough. He's a great orator. He can just say whatever the fuck he wants and people will buy it. Now, when you have your own company and you have a bunch of yes men and women around you, that works. But when you're in the big boy leagues, big girl leagues, the presidency, you've got people that don't have to say yes to you that are going to say, what the fuck did you just say? Elaine for JC, we've got such crooked leaders in Texas with Greg Abbott and Paxton. I would have to agree, Elaine. There aren't many people more crooked than Ken Paxton, your AG. I mean, I think he's a convicted criminal. Why they haven't done anything to him, I don't know. And Greg Abbott is just despicable. It's despicable. He's fucking evil. What are the chances we can win both House and Senate? I've answered this a number of times. House, definitely. The Senate's going to be harder, but I think they'll win the Senate too, just by virtue of the climate with Roe v. Wade and all that stuff. Michelle says, there are so many volunteers that we have shifts that you have to show up for or you get replaced. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's never happened before. Tony, yeah, all the Florida old timers, they don't want to lose their Social Security. They're not that stupid. Well, old people, you should be quite aware. Donald Trump will say, I'm not going to take your Social Security, but Donald Trump says a lot of things, and he's a pathological liar. And the facts are the facts. You just have to look at Project 2025, and that specifically says we're going to cut that or privatize it or do whatever the fuck. How many MAGA are left? Well, I think a generous guess would be about 25 to 30%. If you've ever talked to somebody in MAGA, I get it all the time. People talk to people from MAGA and they try to convince them what's right. You can't do it. I have tried many times. They aren't going to listen to shit. They're not going to believe anything. So don't even bother trying to switch their minds. The only thing that's going to get them to change their minds is absolute embarrassment. And after this November election, there's going to be a lot of embarrassed motherfuckers. Really appreciate your work, Rational Boomer. I appreciate you listening. And Memo Morris says, I don't think it's as close as they say. I know it's not as close as they say. You got to understand the polls are out there to benefit the media. If this was going to be a wipeout, they would not promote the fact that it's a wipeout, because if you tell everybody that it's going to be a landslide, then they're not going to be locked on their television sets so they can get viewers and make money. They're trying to keep this close or appear to be close so they can make their money. That's the sad thing about this. I hope Harris Walls visits the villages in Florida. Now, that would be interesting. Stay in the car, though. STDs are running wild down there. I'm in Texas, and I think it will be very close. I think that's a reasonable guess. To say it's going to turn blue, that might be a little presumptuous, but I think it will be close, certainly closer than it's ever been. Has Trump really called Netanyahu to interfere with the negotiations? Well, that wouldn't surprise me in the least. Netanyahu is just basically a mini Donald Trump. They're best buddies. Call him and say, don't settle this thing till after the election because I don't want Joe Biden to get the positive publicity. We know he's done it with uh, the bipartisan border bill, so it's not surprising to see that he might have done that with Netanyahu. I can't believe the police association backed Trump. Yeah, well, we have some problems with some police departments, not all police officers, but we do have issues with some of them. We need some reform with police departments. Now, people have said we need to defund the police. That's just fucking stupid. You don't do that. Um, you don't defund the police. What I suggest with the police, we pay them more and expect more. Pay them like professionals and put them under the microscope and make them responsible for all the things they do. Pay them enough where if they don't cooperate or they fuck up, they're gone. Now, that has a lot to do with the union. The union's very strong. But when people's lives are on the line, we've got to change some shit very quickly. You need to audit the police and monitor them more. Absolutely. Great Captain says ignore the trolls and just laugh at them like their parents did. Good advice. Take talking about the police, take away immunity and pay them more. I agree. That's not a bad idea. The problem isn't the police departments, it's the quality of the police officers. So we have to do something to get better quality police officers, pay them more, put them through more training, put them through psychological training, hold their feet to the fire, and if they fuck up, they're gone. And when you lose a good job with good pay, you're going to have more motivation to do the job correctly. Tia says it's a tough job. Yeah, being a cop is a tough job. No question about that. Um, Hold on a second here. Uh, Mike, are they giving him daily security briefs? No, they're not. And it's funny. Donald Trump is trying to divert that to, he's saying, yeah, even if they gave me um, security briefs, I wouldn't look at them because I'd look at them and then they'd accuse me of leaking them. What that really means is they're not giving him security briefs. He's a convicted felon. I don't think they can, but he's trying to make it out like, well, they're not giving me security briefs, but I didn't want them anyway. That's typical of Donald Trump. Do you think the new Georgia law will have any effect on the Georgia outcome? I don't know enough about it. Um, I think the governor and some of the other folks in Georgia are trying to get a handle on the problems they have down there. Is it going to affect things? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a definite chance of winning Georgia, but here's what you got to understand: if they flip Florida, Georgia doesn't matter. So I'm not too worried about it. Trump hasn't worked a fucking day in his life, and you give him your money. Yeah, that's true. The fact that people still give him money, all I have to say is give him all your money. Go ahead, Trump fucks, give him all your money. I would do that. Some police calls don't really need a police officer. There should be another type of group. Yeah, maybe a different level or something like that. I don't think that's a bad idea. Make them an elite group of civil servants. Yeah, there's any number of things we could do, but we pay them better and expect more and hold them accountable for the things they do. VSU Dad says, hello, I've been following you for almost a year. I love your truth to power. Keep up the good work. Thank you, VSU Dad. I appreciate that immensely. And Rain Doug SK, not as tough as being a roofer. Being a roofer is tough. I've had some friends that were roofers. One of the first jobs I ever had, they were tearing I'm little. I'm 10 years old, and they were tearing the roof off a church across the street from my house. And they paid me and my brother and some other friends to pick up the stuff off the ground and put it in the dumpster. And that was a tough job. Certainly not a job I'm willing to do. My job consisted of working in radio and sitting behind a desk and talking shit and not moving much. TJ says, Mike, we're at 115 and all is stable. Yeah, I see that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to hang in here a little bit as long as people are still willing to talk. I appreciate it, TJ. We have to break the blue wall. Yeah, we have to create the blue wall. Why do MAGA consistently ignore Trump's convictions? Because they don't respect anything. They don't respect anybody or anything, and they will never admit they're wrong. So they're going to act like it doesn't exist. Will Trump be jailed right after I get in office? Assuming you mean Kamala. No, it'll take some time. These trials all take time, and it doesn't matter. He's going to be beaten like a dog the whole time he's on trial. It's right after the election. He's not going to be cuffed and thrown in jail unless Judge Juan Marchand sentences him to jail. Now, they delayed the sentencing from September 18th to November 26th. So 3 weeks after the election, he's going to be sentenced. And he's not going to have the protection of saying, well, it's the election. It's not fair. It'll be over. He'll be a private citizen. Um, yeah, he could go to jail, but not immediately after. Latino vote will change Texas and Florida. I hope that's correct. I've heard a lot of people say the Latino vote is a lot for Trump. I'm not sure why that would be the case. Um, Somebody says you pay attention to Trump's every word. No, I don't. I listen to bits and pieces because that's all it needs to be. He's dumb as fuck. Zoot allures acts. Vikes have a quarterback yet. Yeah. Vikes have Sam Darnold starting tomorrow. He's kind of a journeyman quarterback. He hasn't had a lot of good luck in the places he's been, but the Vikings offer him some interesting tools, a good offensive line, the best receiver in football in JJ, and a running back, Aaron Jones, we got from Green Bay. I don't know how it's going to turn out, to be honest with you. Um, the rookie quarterback, he's hurt. We won't even see him till next year. So they have a quarterback. It blows my mind. What blows my mind is how MAGA believes Trump when he says he's not about Project 2025. Does that really surprise you? Of all the things he's told these people over the years, these dumb fucks will believe anything, absolutely anything. Um, Donaldson's looked pretty good with the 49ers last year. He'll be okay. Yeah, we're talking football. Um, it's Darnold, actually, Sam Darnold. I think he's a serviceable quarterback if he's got a good supporting cast. And with Minnesota, he'll have a good supporting cast. I hope he comes out there, kicks some ass. He won't be with us next year, but he kicks some ass, improves his standing, and gets a big contract. I hope that for him, and I hope that for the Vikings. Eileen says, are you looking forward to the debate? I actually am looking forward to the debate. I think Kamala will decimate him. I don't think it'll be close. She'll beat him on facts and information. He'll be just spewing gibberish. I think she will go after him. It will embarrass him and he will lose his shit. So if we get a chance to see Donald Trump look like a fool and lose his shit, yeah, I'm in there. All right. I'm so curious to know, Mike, thoughts about this Musk and Trump coalition and the Twitter agenda. Musk is all about power. And you notice who the VP candidate is. It's JD Vance. JD Vance is kind of a tech bro too. Peter Thiel, he also supported JD Vance being the VP. I have a regular guest on the podcast, Old Soul, and she made an interesting comment. Donald Trump's 78 years old. He's not very healthy. I think the Elon Musks and the Peter Thiels are hoping against hope that Donald Trump wins. JD Vance is the VP. Donald Trump keels over at some point within the presidency, and we got JD Vance as a president. Sorry, bitches, that's not going to happen. Not even close. Um, Jan Rolling Thunder, I love your wit and insights. Would you like to repost your content? Would like to repost, but still an active high school teacher. Yeah, I get that. I get that. I appreciate that. My wife was a teacher for 30 years. She's now retired. Um, I have other friends that were teachers and they seem they're restricted. They can't just put things out. And that's the one advantage I have that I appreciate more than anything. I don't work for anybody. And anybody else that would tell me not to do this, they know I'm not going to listen anyway. So I have the full freedom to say what I want to do. And uh, even though you can't say it, Jan, I'll say it for you, and you could just like the shit if you want. Boomer, what will be the most eventful, a Harris win or a Trump win? I think they're going to both be very eventful. You know, a Harris win will be a positive thing for this country. People will be yelling and screaming in the streets. If Trump wins, you know, the Trump folks are always saying if Trump doesn't win, there's going to be a civil war. That's not the case. But I will tell you this, if Trump wins, the Democrats might get wired up. I mean, they're looking at this as the end of democracy, the harm to their kids. We might see Democrats lose their shit. And I hope that's not the case. And I don't think he can win, so I'm not worried about it. Do you think we will have universal health care? I think ultimately we will. We should have. Everybody fucking else has it. It only makes sense as long as the Republicans aren't in control. We will have it. Chad says, I love your shit every day. Thank you very much. What do you think about Fuentes saying he's working against Trump because he admitted lying about 2020? I think it's hilarious. And these people will always eat their own when things get bad, including Donald Trump. Half his cabinet are saying they won't vote for him. 200 Republicans are saying they won't vote for him. Liz Cheney says she's endorsing Kamala Harris. And then Satan himself, her dad, Dick Cheney, is voting for Donald Trump, or not voting for Donald Trump, but Kamala Harris. These people are so bad that when things go south, they will eat each other's young. Actually, JD Vance is a brilliant choice because when he loses, he can blame him. And if he wins, well, I always get a kick out of this. They say that JD Vance is dragging Donald Trump's chances down. Really? I mean, Donald Trump's got 34 felony charges. Donald Trump's been found liable of sexual assault. He's got three other criminal trials hanging on. Does he really need JD Vance to pull him down? I don't know. This loss will be solidly on Donald Trump's shoulders, and he will take it as such, and he won't be able to handle it because his ego will just fucking explode. How far do you live from Walls? Well, I'm in a western suburb of Minneapolis. The governor's mansion's in St. Paul. Maybe 20 minutes, something like that. It's not like we hang out though. I don't know Governor Walls, but not that far. Hi from Illinois. We like listening to you. Well, thank you, Sparkle. I appreciate that. Mike says, Tess just says Tulsi Gabbard. Fuck Tulsi Gabbard. She's a traitor. Why won't Bush endorse Kamala? He hates Trump. It's a good question. He's been getting some pressure. I had somebody call out George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice. They should support Kamala. Why they haven't, I don't know. I mean, I thought George W. Bush was the dumbest president we ever had. And then when Donald Trump came in, I was missing George W. Bush. George W. Bush wasn't a great president either. He was a problem. Whether he will endorse Kamala or not, I'm not sure. I don't know that it really matters. It would be nice if he did. It would be smart if he did. But, you know, he's an old guy. He's retired. He doesn't have to do anything. Larry Sue says, I come here to get recharged from being exposed to all the Trump videos. Well, happy to do it. Real Life Work says, Satan is voting for Harris. Wow. Yep. There aren't too many people worse or meaner than Dick Cheney. And Donald Trump talks shit about Dick Cheney. He says he's irrelevant. He's a rhino. You know, Dick's 83 years old, but I still think he could probably fuck up Donald Trump. And he is Satan. So I wouldn't fuck with Dick Cheney. I don't like Dick Cheney, but I'm not going to talk shit about um, Dick Cheney. Thoughts on Buttigieg as Secretary of State? I'd probably be okay with that. You know, he's a transportation director now. Kamala wins. I see him staying on the cabinet, and I see him probably getting a promotion. So that's definitely possible. I misfired sending Tulsi Gabbard's name. I wanted to say, what the fuck happened to Tulsi Gabbard? Tulsi Gabbard's always been a weird woman. She claimed to be Democrat, you know, much like RFK Jr., and she's not. You know, Kamala Harris, I think, even said in 2019 at the debates that she was basically an operative for the Russian government, and which is probably true and would make sense now that she's aligning with Donald Trump. And she's, get this, she's the one coaching Donald Trump for the debate. Yeah, good luck on that. Will Kamala win? Yes, she's going to win. So even Satan is smarter than a Trump tard. That's true. Is it true that Nate Silver is funded by the right wingers? Yeah, it is. He owned that company 538. He got a lot of play because it was very accurate in its pollings. But then he sold 538 and he took another job or another position with a right wing organization. So, yes, he is funded by a right wing organization, which means you can't believe shit that he says. Polls have a PA as a tie. Well, as I said before, I don't listen to polls. I don't know what's going on in um, Pennsylvania per se, but I think all of the country is kind of sliding toward Kamala Harris. I don't think the polls are indicative of what really the vote's going to be on November 5th. They may have it as a tie. That's better than her losing, but I think she's going to win Pennsylvania too with the help of Josh Shapiro. Where have you been? Haven't seen you in a while. New kid on the talk. I've been here, man. I'm here every day. I do 4 to 8 TikToks every day. I do podcast every day. I'm always been here. It's got to be the algorithm. MJ 5150, love your work, Boomer, all the way from Sydney, Australia. Well, thank you. I love hearing from people all over the world. I get that a lot. Ireland, Canada, Mexico, Belgium, Australia. It's kind of cool that we get those folks. Ray Don says, "Love me some Pete." Yeah, I do too. I've been listening to you for 6 months, and you always telling it like it is. Well, I'm trying. You know, somebody came on my thing and said, you know, I really like your optimism, but you're never right. Now, I will tell you this. I have the capacity of being wrong. I'm not afraid of being wrong, but never right. I've been right a lot. And it's not because I'm brilliant, it's because I'm just looking at the data, logic, common sense, as opposed to getting all emotional about the shit. I live in Hawaii and nobody I know likes her. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard's from Hawaii, and it wouldn't surprise me why she's on the mainland all the time and not back in her home state. Francine says, I appreciate your perspective, especially since I live in Oklahoma. Oh, sorry for that. That's one of those states like Alabama. It gets a little red down there. So I appreciate you holding strong down in a state that's so tough to deal with. It was HRC who first hinted someone as an asset, and Tulsi took offense without being named. Yes, you're right. It was not Kamala, it was Hillary. You're absolutely right. See, I was wrong again, and I own it, and it's no big deal that I'm wrong. I always have somebody out there that's smarter than me or smarter than me on the show that can straighten my shit out. In this case, Gray Captain, a moderator on this live, straightened my shit out, and I appreciate it. You are right. It was Hillary. I see Josh Shapiro possibly replacing Garland as AG. Yeah, I suppose that's possible. Could be Amy Klobuchar, could be Raskin. It could be any number of people. I just hope that she gets on that right away and replaces Merrick Garland because he's fucking doing a horrible job. Uh, she won't let him talk over her. She's a pro. Yeah, you know, this whole talking over her, he really can't do that with the muted mics. And there is a way to handle people like Donald Trump if you're good enough and you're strong enough, and she is. Trump for anybody was enough dollars to pay him because remember what he said to the oil companies. Yeah. Yeah, just give me $1 billion and I'll do whatever the fuck you want. I'll bend over and you can do whatever you want. Always enjoy your honest and frank opinions. Most New Zealanders I speak with are all for Harris. New Zealand. Thank you. Another international country. Sorry, just joined. What about the comment that Clarence Thomas offered legal advice to the Trump team? Well, they'd have to prove it. And it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case. I don't know if doing that is illegal, but I know they think they've got Clarence Thomas bought and paid for. But the fact of the matter is, Thomas only has so much clout. If you want clout in the Supreme Court, you've got to own several of the justices. Clarence Thomas is in trouble. When Kamala Harris wins, some people are going to be knocking on his door for him and his wife, probably with indictments. You're the best at predicting outcomes. Keep it up. We believe in you. Thank you, HBJ. Um, he wrote opinion that gave instructions. No, that's what the Republicans are saying. That's what Donald Trump is saying. There were no instructions in that. They just assumed that. And they're saying that in hopes that people will believe it. Even though the mic will be muted, Trump will be babbling loudly in the background and looking like a fool while doing it. So, Kamala wanted the mics unmuted. So if it does bleed over into hers, she'd probably be happy about that. Nate Silver says he's voting for Harris. Do you think this is just a smokescreen? Well, anybody who's in league with the Republicans, I have to believe, has a propensity of lying. I don't really care what Nate Silver says or what he's doing. If he's working with the Republicans, he's a piece of shit that can't be trusted. Bush put out a statement today. I heard that he's not endorsing anyone. What a surprise. Well, yeah, it's not surprising. It's a gutless move by George W. Bush, and I wouldn't expect any less from him. Kate, 1.7 million Americans living abroad. I think they are for Harris, waiting to see if they vote. Yeah, that's the important thing, that they vote. But I think, it's the weird thing about this is that there, I get DMs and emails from a lot of other countries, and people in other countries are very concerned and very focused on what's going here. They don't want Donald Trump to win because they feel like it will affect them ultimately, and that's true. So if we do have Americans living abroad, they probably feel the same kind of pressure, and hopefully they will vote. Veterans for the Truth, like you and Harris, thank you. Clarence needs to go to jail. I agree. When Thomas was confirmed, I knew he would be a problem. That was a long time ago. Pete, you don't look that old. But yeah, he was a problem back then. Let's see here. We're probably getting down to the end. I've been on here for an hour and a half, which is a lot longer than I normally am, but I'm having a good time talking to you folks, and I appreciate you coming in. I noticed that there's hardly any MAGA live since the DOJ started going after Russian sympathizers. That's true. It's kind of like the insurrectionists. They were all excited going after the Capitol and stuff. Then they said there'll be a civil war when Donald Trump is indicted. Nothing happened. There's going to be a civil war when he gets convicted. Nothing happened. And these pussy ass bitches ain't going to do nothing. And they're probably scared to death about the idea of doing lives again. So I think that's good. Are you serious? I don't know what that means. Are you trying to spell serious? At this point, Bush's opinion is irrelevant. No one from either party is looking for him for guidance. You're absolutely right. Uh, George Bush, whether he gives George Bush's endorsement doesn't really mean anything. How do we arrest all the insurrectionists in Congress? Well, after the election, we understand there will be a superseding indictment, yet another superseding indictment, and those people involved in the insurrections will likely get indicted. That's how we do it. What do you think of Putin's endorsement? Fucking Putin. He's a war criminal. He's a pathological liar. He's Donald Trump's puppet master. I don't give a fuck what Putin says. Somebody should end that reign of terror in what, not Washington, and Russia. I cannot believe he made his way into the White House once, let alone being the Republic nominee. Well, I will tell you something about this. Him making it into the White House. Part of the problem was the media. He wasn't a credible candidate at first, but they kept putting him on TV, gave him some credibility. They're responsible for Donald Trump becoming president. In addition to that, it should be a red flag to our government officials that he was elected. They were so they didn't like Hillary Clinton. They didn't like established politics, and so they voted for anybody that was different than that. So establishment government should take note of that and try to change some things. And I'm talking about Democrats and Republicans as well. Did George W. Bush endorse Trump? No. Um, and Chris says, "Oh yeah, he'll have the last word in the debate. He'll be mad. I look like an ass by then." Well, yeah, he's got whatever he says is going to make no sense. And Kamala, every time Donald Trump talks, she should say, "What the hell did he just say?" Make fun of this motherfucker at every turn. Jack Smith should replace Garland. Well, he'd be as good as anybody. Are they planning on fact checking the debate? I don't know. Probably not. The moderators haven't done it before. Kamala will be doing some fact checking along with her attacks. It's going to be a vastly different situation than Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And it's not that Joe Biden did a bad job, it was just a mismatch in terms of the personalities. And Joe's older. Donald Trump had a horrible debate. The things he said were absolutely ridiculous. The fact that they focused on Joe being slow and not Donald Trump's crazy fucking answers is a problem with the media. They aren't going to have that problem with Kamala because she'll match his energy and also talk some serious shit. So I'm not worried about that at all. Let's see here. Um, would you be willing to get Hawk on your podcast? Would be a good guest. Yeah, I'd have Hawk on the podcast, but here's the thing. I don't know Hawk. I reached out to him a couple times about being on the podcast without even knowing him, and I never got a response. I don't know. Maybe he didn't see it or whatever, or maybe he doesn't like me. It could be. It doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, I would have virtually anybody on the podcast. I've had Trumplefucks on. I have mostly listeners on. Um, I think Hawk and I don't agree on certain things. Uh, Not much. We're all pretty much in line. We just have a different approach to things, but that doesn't matter. I don't have a problem with people coming on the show that disagree with me on some things. I get that all the time, and I'm fine. I'm more than willing to listen to other people's point of view because I'm fully capable of changing my mind anytime. Um, my U.S. born daughter in law, now Australian citizen, is voting for Harris. Nice. Uh, And TJ the Plumber says, listen to the Rational Boomer podcast on YouTube and Spotify. It's a great podcast. I know I sound a little arrogant saying that, but it actually is a good podcast. And it's not all because of me, it's because of the people I have on the show and the emails and that sort of stuff. And we have a chance to spend more time talking about things that we don't have the time for on TikTok. Um, let's see here. Dr. Stephanie says, I will drop your name to Hawk. I think we're mutuals. I think we both follow each other. I watch his stuff all the time. Um, and he says, you and Hawk have similarity. Yeah, I know we do. I watch Hawk all the time. I get a lot of great information from him. I have no problem with Hawk. I like it. It's not that we have different ideas about things. I think we're on the same line. It's just we have different approaches as to how we do the TikToks. And, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. Um, at first, I thought you were talking about the Hawk Tua girl. You know what? That Hawk Tua girl, she was going to get 15 minutes of fame, but I've seen her in videos. She's got a good personality. She's smart. She's quick witted. She might do something. And I never would have thought that. I never would have thought that, but I like her. She's a very likable person. She's got a podcast now. Maybe I should get her on my podcast. I doubt that would happen. And I don't think she'd want to talk politics. Absolutely. Bringing you two together is epic. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I will talk to anybody, and I have a lot of respect for Hawk. So I would talk to him. I just don't know if he's into it. You know, I don't know if he's going to say, I really don't like him like that. And that's fine too. The first podcast that I heard of yours, you had Ed. You two are nice together. Yeah, Ed is a different kind of guy. I've known Ed for 30 years. Ed and I worked on a radio station together for like 25 years. So we have a lot of chemistry working together. We know how one another talks and we know how to kind of weave things in and out. So yeah, Ed's a great guest. He wasn't on this week because he had something else to do. Um, uh, but he'll be on next week. Good evening. You sound like you're feeling better. Yeah, I am feeling better. I had a cold for a time and it made things a little tough. Um, Dr. Arlene Unfiltered. Arlene's been on twice. She's been on the show twice. Um, and she'll be on again. I love Arlene. She's great. And we don't agree on everything either. She's strictly facts and statistics. I come from a different angle. We don't always agree on everything, but I love Arlene. She's doing a hell of a job and she's very valuable. If you don't listen to her, you should. What was the topic of your first TikTok? Jesus Christ, that was 4 years ago. I don't even know. I don't know what the topic of my first TikTok yesterday was. I'm 64 years old. I tell people at 64 years old, I can remember the 70s like it was yesterday, but I frequently forget to zip my pants when I come out of the bathroom today. Just give you an idea that short term shit is hard. Uh, all right. What did you do in the music business and what radio genre were you? I worked at a lot of radio stations. I worked at a news talk station. I worked at a public station. I worked at a country station. I worked at a lot of different stations, did all the different jobs from disc jockey to production director to sales to all that stuff. It's a horrible business. I would never do it again or recommend it. In the music business, I owned a recording studio in downtown Minneapolis, happened to be just across the street from First Avenue during the time when Prince was coming out. I wasn't musically inclined. I was doing radio commercials. Somebody came in and said, "Hey, do you do music?" I needed the money. I said, "Fuck yeah, I do music." And then I kind of got into it. I represented some artists that we had some luck with. So I'm not musically inclined, but I was in the middle of that craziness in Minnesota in the 80s. And I participated in it and actually got some things done. So um, that's what it was. And, I've been trying to think of ways. I've got some interesting stories and interesting connections in the music business. I'm trying to find out a way to do a podcast about those things, but I can't do it on this podcast because it doesn't have anything to do with politics. But there are some interesting stories. So I'm working on that. Anyway, we've been going at this for an hour and 45 minutes. I'm an old man. I got to get some sleep, but I want to thank you all for coming out and listening. I appreciate it immensely. I'm going to do some more lives and I look forward to have you coming back and feel free to ask me anything. I'm happy to do it. So you have a good night. Don't forget, check out the Rational Boomer podcast, the audio version on Spotify, the video version on YouTube. Just go to the respective places, put in Rational Boomer. They'll take you right there. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. You have a great night. Okay. I got that all squared away. And I almost forgot to finish the fucking podcast. I do that every goddamn time. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. You just have to deal with it. I'll cut it out in the audio version, but I don't know how to do that on the video version. Anyway, we went an hour and 45 minutes of me talking straight. So there's no reason for me to go any further. But I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Um, I hope you have a great day. And of course, we will talk to you tomorrow. I think we're going to have Will on tomorrow. So that should be interesting. But thank you for listening to the Rational Boomer podcast. We will talk to you tomorrow.